Market Access 4.0.
Welcome here to our Mars webinar. And we are really happy today to have a great webinar today about our newest product, about AMNOG efficiency, the fast track your dossier writing, the DOBO. So let me just introduce shortly the team. With me today is the CEO and founder of Mars, Dr. Stefan Walzer. Hello, Stefan.
Hi, Lutz. Thanks for having me.
And also on the show today is Alexei Zavrogodny from the Ukraine. Hello, Alex.
Hello. Thank you very much for having me here.
Wonderful. So we are talking today about large language models in healthcare and how that revolutionized the dossier writing with AI. So, Stefan, are we now like just press the button and the work is done?
The question is really if you want to have that, right? But no, I think we are not there. If we ever get there, it's maybe another question, maybe also something for the discussion shortly after with Alex. But for sure, the current kind of models will help and make our lives as healthcare, maybe call it reimbursement managers, I think a lot easier, a lot faster. And obviously, it might also help everybody to focus much more on the important thoughts, the strategy, and the quality aspect of the dossier. So maybe before we go into some of the discussions, I think also with Alex, the idea is to quickly introduce our product, as Lutz said it, DOBO, the dossier writing bot. That was also how the name basically was created. It was first a working title, which was more dossier and bot. And I think finally we obviously moved to a quite catchy name, which is now called DOBO. But maybe start, let's say, where probably most of the attendees might have had the experience in, probably especially in the past, but maybe still nowadays. I think any kind of dossier, especially in the reimbursement area, whether it's an AMNOG dossier, whether it's a French HAS dossier, a NICE dossier, or maybe any kind of other dossier like an AMCP in the US or where else in the world, is, let's say, having a lot of, let's say, creating a lot of hassles for the writers and for the team around that. I think it starts obviously with, let's say, the screening of the literature, the evaluation, which kind of data should go into a dossier. Then obviously once you have done that, by the way, we're cooperating here with a nested knowledge on the systematic literature search, which is also an AI in that area. But once that is done, you basically need to move over and then need to find the right kind of spots, the right areas, and also then to summarize, obviously, those kind of areas within the various publications and also the clinical study reports, for example. So it's a vast amount of data, it's a vast amount of, let's say, literature, text, which needs to be, let's say, put into the right order in the various documents, and then also still in the language of the submission. But the kind of hassle, what I would say, is not even over there, right? I mean, it's also around, let's say, communication and coordination of further experts, in-house experts, company experts, but also, for example, from our perspective as well, client experts. And I have had as well the experience not only as a consultant, but I also worked quite for some years in the industry. Hence, I also saw obviously the other side, meaning not to forget the extensive and sometimes also burdensome review process. One would just need to think about basically approaching a senior manager who needs to approve maybe even the kind of full dossier, just ask him or her to review maybe 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever kind of pages. You could just imagine what kind of feelings that would, let's say, come out of the person. So ultimately, it's high total cost. It's high total cost just to write the dossier. We're not speaking about the other kind of parts which might maybe still be needed, obviously, in a kind of reimbursement submission process. It's very time consuming. I think when we speak about a global value dossier, but also an AMNOG dossier, also other dossiers, you might easily hit the 1 year time, let's say from the start of the project until you can submit, including obviously review, etc. But everything included there. It's extensive documents, and you still have the kind of, let's say, issues around, let's say, finding maybe the right kind of experts, but also the kind of language restrictions. Just keep in mind, if you need to submit the dossier in France, you need to have it in French. If you need to do it in Spain, you need to have it in Spanish, etc. Meaning a review process, especially, for example, also for smaller companies, is quite difficult because you don't have maybe all of the kind of language experience in the company. So what have we done? We have, next slide, please, Lutz. What we have done is we have, let's say, taken pre-trained large language models, and I'm happy that Alex is here because he is the AI expert with whom we have developed let's say, the platform for the dossier writing. So the kind of whole stream of the platform is quite simple. So you first basically start by choosing the dossier type. So as an example, global value dossier or AMNOG dossier or AMCP in the US. You can then collect and upload the kind of underlying documents, meaning the evidence base, so the clinical study report, the different publications, any kind of other report, that this is then, let's say, being uploaded within the system. Then the kind of AI, what we have then created for the various, let's say, dossier types, can make the work. Once you think everything is up and ready in terms of base, so the evidence base, then you can press the button, and after that you can also have then obviously a more streamlined support process, because every single paragraph in the various dossiers can then be basically individually finalized and obviously beforehand sent for review. The finalization, the export of the dossier, that's also important, especially important when you're thinking about the different country dossiers. For Germany, for example, or also for France, which is not yet available, but we have it in our mind, obviously. Whenever you have that whole process done, for example, in English, if you have a lot of English reviewers, you can, let's say, press the button, everything is being, let's say, recollected, put into the original template, but the original template is being filled with a country-specific language, meaning a country, a language kind of expert would just, let's say, finally go through it, and then everything is being finalized. So you have a lot of different steps where you can streamline the work, and hence the time before you have a dossier ready. Just very briefly, I mean, this is just a couple of snapshots that you see how this looks like. It's a quite, that's a standard way. I think you can create different projects. You can then also dedicate different team members, also in terms of level of importance, let's say, right? You can have the writers, you can have different levels of reviewers, and then also different levels of finalization. Next slide, please. And then after that, once that is basically set there, you can then obviously, let's say, see the structure of the dossier. This is just one example, which is the German AMNOG dossier. You see it in German. So you, once you have that ready, once everything is basically being linked to, you can upload the various documents if you want. And if you know that already as well, you can, while uploading, also dedicate already various documents to the various sub-chapters. I mean, whoever knows that, I mean, obviously, for example, in a module 3, in a German, let's say, dossier, you can, or you have as well, let's say, specific areas where, for example, you only, or let's say, primarily focus on a report given by the GBA, which is then based on the minutes of the consultation, for example, especially when it comes to the appropriate comparator. In some other areas, you have maybe other kind of papers. So it's more easily, let's say, if you click on that. So what do? Once everything is up there, it's uploaded, you basically press the button in order, let's say, upload the document, meaning fill out the template, then the LLM is processing it. That normally takes you, next slide, please, Lutz. That normally takes you for about 20 to 30 minutes, depending a bit how many and what the size of different documents are. And then you have basically your draft dossier already ready for review. That's quite clear, I think. So coming back, let's next slide, please. So coming back to the question Lutz had at the very early beginning, it's not, maybe not yet, that you can, let's say, press a button and all of the work is done. You still need to obviously, one, review it. Secondly, you need as well to put your strategic views into the kind of, let's say, finalization. Then finally, quite clearly finish the work by just saying, yes, this is now fine as we have it. So this is not a big change to the kind of current work what we are all currently doing, but the way to come to that point is obviously much shorter. So you can, let's say, claim in a way Adobe is maybe solving the issue, is at least helping to solve the issues, one by streamlining the dossier development process while still ensuring obviously high quality, let's say, submission. But that is also where you still need some experts around it. You need obviously a data secure LLM, and that's then also where I will just hand over in a couple of seconds to Alexei. We can see, let's say, secure that one for sure. But that was always how we, let's say, developed the whole kind of tool, because obviously we know that in such dossiers, not only publicly available information are available and are used in there. You can also manage different dossier types within the same platform. So for example, if you need, or maybe you are a small company and you need maybe the German dossier plus the global value dossier, maybe one or two others at the same time, you can use the same kind of platform in there. You can save a significant amount of time and hence also money when creating then the dossiers. So that's also a big kind of hassle for a lot of companies. And finally, we have also, or you could obviously as well benefit if you want that from the support of the experienced market access expert team, and or we have as well a very good network across various countries where people can then as well get the support they need in order to finalize the dossier. Just one more slide. Where are we so far? So we have already started, because we are coming out of the German environment. We have started with the AMNOG dossier. That's ready. We are having ready the versions ready to, let's say, showcase for the AMCP in the US and also for the global value dossier. And we are just about to, let's say, finish in order to test it, let's say, the joint clinical assessment, which is obviously as one important milestone when thinking about that kind of process, which is kicking in the first quarter next year. Further dossier types are already in the pipeline. But that's the kind of frame. And I think Lutz, probably we just as well get Alexei into the kind of discussion here as well, because one of the key questions, Alex, what we also had around the development was obviously to have a secure, a safe space for the documents people might be using for the dossier. So what is it and how did you basically develop it?
Yeah, I would say security was number one pinnacle when we were developing the architecture of the whole solution, and it was number one priority consideration. So first of all, the first layer of security is guaranteed by the way we are using large language models. In this solution, we are not using the popular cloud-based models like ChatGPT. We are utilizing Facebook Llama and the version which can be deployed on premise. So it can be deployed completely into the internet without sharing the data with the world around, with other large language models instances or with any other entities. So it is completely on premise, and data never leaves the security premise of the organization using it. And moreover, we use pre-trained model, but most of the work done on the specific project, on the specific dossier, is done for the context, which is unique per project. So there is kind of naturally a Chinese wall between different projects, different dossiers created, even if it's created by the same organization. Meaning that this level of security is applicable for agencies and consulting companies who create dossiers on behalf of their clients. They can be sure that the data of one client is never kind of leaked into the dossier of another client in any way. And yeah, kind of overall, we are, as a product builder, Unixoft, we are ISO 27001 certified company, and actually these principles are everywhere in terms of the data security and the protection. So there is no chance that data will be leaked through the security incident or hacker attack. So I guess that's pretty much main points regarding the security, and as I mentioned, that was our #1 priority. So we did a lot of work and effort there.
Yeah, exactly. No, I remember. I think all of the discussions we had throughout the current project development. I think maybe as well an important consideration, and I think that's also what you mentioned when we started the discussion also on the project, let's say, idea. So really early on was that I think you and your team is especially also coming out of the fintech area, right? So another very kind of specialized, or let's say special area where clients look onto the kind of data security and safety, correct?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a large expertise in fintech. So overall, all the regulated industries share kind of the same high standards and requirements for the data security. So that obviously helped a lot. And the experience and internal standards and procedures we developed while working for the fintech industry obviously were much of the great help here in this particular application.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, let's say I mean, we have a lot of pain points, obviously, where, let's say, from a market access manager's perspective, and I wrote those as well in the past on my own, and I managed those, let's say, before Mars, obviously, within the company. But what were your, let's say, main challenges? I would not say pain points because I think the team, I mean, your team is really great, but I think also the way how we, let's say, develop the solutions. But what were the main challenges from your perspective? Because you're more coming from the obviously programming or tech area when thinking about the Dobo as we have it as of now.
Yeah, I wouldn't say challenge, but the interesting thing about this development was actually that we were successful in implementing the way of thinking and actually implementing the expertise of market access professionals such as you, Stefan, with like 20 plus years of experience and understanding of the dossier structures in all the process and what is required for each section to be properly filled into the code. So that was basically a large part of this project was a knowledge transfer with an effort of our business analysts to get information out of your colleagues' head and put it into the large language model so it does kind of operates and acts as you would. And that was very interesting part about this because this is basically kind of scaling the not just creating the software which optimizes some process. This is basically a way to scale the knowledge and automate the knowledge. So that was an interesting part. Security, once again, of course, that was challenging, but we knew what to do. And overall, I believe the interesting part was to create an optimal way, but that's more technical, to process the huge amounts of data we were receiving as an input, which was not always properly structured. So some of the PDF files which are coming as an input are quite messy, etc., etc. So the big part was kind of to create a proper architecture and data platforms to index properly and store the data. And that's thousands of pages of PDF files, and quickly and efficiently summarize it into the structured dossier. So these, I would say, three main kind of interesting peculiarities about this development, about this solution.
Sounds interesting. No, absolutely. I mean, I can only let's say agree. I think it was a challenge obviously at the beginning because we were really speaking different languages.
Oh yeah,
which was quite clear because your background is the background of your team is obviously totally different versus, let's say, my or our background. So we always needed to find a way, let's say, to come on a similar level. But I think after some time we were really also efficient in that way. So even without an AI, right, it was just human by human.
Yeah, I can imagine for you that process was like teaching a 7-year-old kid or something like this, right?
Yeah, but that's okay. No worries. I think it was probably the same way around, right?
If vice versa, yeah.
Tell me how the AI basically works, right? I'm like, okay. Maybe coming back to the old classical movie Philadelphia, right? Just explain it to me as I were 3 years old.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We needed a lot of that, and the same goes for the LLM. You should explain everything to LLM as it is a 3-year-old, and that's how you get an efficient
Exactly.
algorithm.
Absolutely.
And then I can just jump in from the audience. We have a question here. So it is only in English available?
And good point. Yes. The basis so far is an English basis, but the language is not a problem because I think we basically did it in the way that we said, look, I mean, especially let's say smaller companies, mid-sized companies, not having let's say a big German team available, they also and especially need the review time in English. That is where we just said, let's start firstly on an English basis and then just finalize it towards the end into the local language, which is also a bit easier when we are thinking about further dossier types like in France, like in Italy, like in Spain or other areas. And obviously with English, it was also a bit easier, let's say, to put up the global value dossier and the US AMCP dossier template. But for sure, we'll also, let's say, make a version available which first starts in the local language. So no need then to go into an English one. Excellent question.
Great. And what do you think, Stefan and Alex, what is the main challenge from a country perspective?
I'm not sure if that is maybe more specified. Is that maybe more towards the, I don't know, to use the dossier, so to use the DOBO, or is it rather to implement maybe the DOBO into the whole kind of maybe of a country process? Do you have more background on that?
No, I don't, but I think it's the second one.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I guess in terms of, let's say, integration, I think that's, Alex, what we also always, let's say, spoke about. For sure, let's say, smaller or mid-sized companies could utilize the DOBO in the way that they could, let's say, more or less, let's say, work in the same way as they have done it with different consultants as ourselves before, that they just say, look, I mean, I need a dossier ready by, and then we would be basically working on that together with the DOBO, and then obviously have the reviewers and the, let's say, reporter or the kind of, let's say, signing off persons within the companies having access to the DOBO, but more on the review level. And we would basically provide them then with a final dossier once ready, very similar to what we now have, but just much faster and to a lower price. But we obviously as well always had in mind that maybe one or the other company maybe wants to use it as well on their own, meaning they want maybe, or maybe they even need to integrate such a kind of platform as well into their IT environment. I think that's, Alex, that's also what we always discussed and had in mind, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's also a question for Alex. The question is that large language models that have been programmed that will be managing data privately or independently from every facility or organization, what is the right terminology to refer to them, to these large language models?
That's the good question. Thank you. I guess that question sounds like where to Google from here, and it sounds interesting. So some tips where to Google the large language model we are using or version of it. Yeah, you can. It's referred as offline or self-hosted GPT, namely Facebook Llama working in offline self-hosted mode. That's number one. And the approach, how we actually achieve the effect of the Chinese wall called RAG or retrieval augmented generation. That's basically the approach where for each, let's say, section of the dossier, we provide, we do not kind of the data which acts as an input data for us. For dossier generation, we do not train the model on this data. We just extract relevant sections of this data before prompting the Facebook Llama to generate every section. So basically, we provide everything we need for each section for a large language model. It generates the answer, then it forgets everything and it moves to the second question. So it's like when it's not like if you imagine it, instead of going to school, when somebody asks where you learn, so say, geometry. When somebody asks you a question of the geometry, they explain you everything about geometry, then ask you a question, you answer the question, then you forget everything. And before asking you the next question about algebra, they tell you everything about algebra, you answer the question and you forget it. And that's how the information is not persistent in the model itself. So when you move from one project to another, nothing is left in the large language model memory. So there is naturally a Chinese wall between projects. I hope it was not too technical, but I hope it answers the question.
Great. And how is it about hallucinations? Is that like when we're talking about large language models, right? We know that from ChatGPT that sometimes it's make up information. So how can we be sure that our data is processed correctly?
Yeah, also a good question, and that is always a case. Again, we achieve the best we can in terms of the hallucinations by providing this explicit context before, or kind of as a context to generating every section, every point, so to say, of the section of the dossier. We provide very much explicit context to the ChatGPT, to the Facebook Llama. And our prompts are built in the way that it requires GPT to back reference every point it mentions, every statement to the source. So with every point, every statement in each dossier section, there is always a backlink, a reference to the source. And actually, this methodology, I have heard a lot of opinions and kind of papers or articles about that. If you construct a prompt for the GPT in the way that it should explain why they did so and back reference the source, the hallucinations are much more likely.
Thank you. Great. And then a big topic, I mean, is data security, right? Now we know that, you know, even large companies, they are a little bit afraid another program. So is there a way they can implement it in their own infrastructure?
Yes, absolutely. This is designed the way it can be implemented in the on-premise offline mode, as I mentioned before.
Great. Now we have also a question. Another question is, in what form can support be provided when creating a dossier? I think that goes to Stefan. So are we actually providing support with the Dobo?
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, we basically offer various, let's say, support options, right? I mean, let's say the least support is obviously if somebody wants to use it on their own, meaning they have the experience, maybe they want just to use maybe one kind of dossier type, and let's say then we just introduce it and give obviously technical support if there are questions or issues around that. I think that can always happen at the very beginning, right? If you're not that used to it, down to the point that you can basically say, I mean, either let's say companies are still, let's say, outsourcing it in a way that we still develop and write in a way, so quality prove it before it goes into review process to the client. That's always possible. So then they only, in quotes, let's say, review, give the feedback, put the comments in there. Then we basically discuss it, align it, put it in there again, and we do those kind of circles as we normally as well do it with the dossiers beforehand, just that everything is much faster because it's on one platform, and the kind of first version is obviously available within just a very few a couple of days, basically, instead of let's say putting everything into months. Or obviously everything between is also possible. So full kind of service package still possible, down to the point that we say only technical, and everything between is obviously always doable.
Great. And now one more question: where can I get a demo? And I already put in here the QR code where you can actually go to our webpage and just submit the form and get your demo there. Or you just write an email to Stefan Walzer at marketaccess-pricingstrategy.de, and then also we are happy to provide you a demo and show you our great Dobo. So when is it already available? When is Dobo available?
Yeah, Dobo is already available. I think we had a quite nice, great launch event also with Alex in person when we have all been at ISPOR in Atlanta. Obviously, it always depends which kind of, let's say, dossier type you're looking for. I think we also had already some discussions on a Polish dossier type. We also had some discussion already on some dossier types in Italy for the IFA, but that basically depends a bit. So if you have the need, if you need to develop a dossier in the next couple of days, weeks, months, I mean, I think, Lutz, you pulled up just the slide on there as well. I mean, just contact either myself or also our project manager, Jonas Jost, on Dobo, or obviously anybody else. I think, Alexei, we also had already joined kind of clients and joined kind of discussion already. So whenever there's a need, just let us know and we will let you know the details.
Great, fantastic. So we will have also here a lot of other projects in our Mars ecosystem. So we have the Dobo, what we talked today. We have Cuba and Waffle, what we talked about last time. And what is coming in our next webinar after the summer in September, I think, Stefan.
Yeah, it's a good one. Actually, we have just spoken about Waffle, the virtual reality platform for training and education in market access, but also in other areas like key account management or sales reps. What we have in mind for early September is Cubo, which is our, let's say, question and answer creator, a very great tool where you can also, let's say, learn on an audio in, audio out basis for various topics. We'll also have our cooperation then being not only being published, but also being discussed at a webinar together with Nested Knowledge, probably towards the end of September. And in October, we are planning another webinar on Max Insights, our early market access planning AI platform, and our other platform, which is called Health Mind. Again, I think together with you, Alex, which is basically the kind of, I mean, as we use it, the market access GPT, but it could be used for any other kind of, let's say, knowledge base that you can, let's say, more or less use like any kind of, let's say, ChatGPT in the world, but again, in a secure and safe environment. But we'll speak about that as well later in autumn.
Great. I'm just checking my LinkedIn and see that there is another comment. A second, and there was a question coming in. Is it appropriate to assume that the LLM has been trained on the existing dossiers for various products and drug indications?
I can answer that.
Yes, please.
Probably, yeah. So generally the LLM was trained only on general pharmaceutical terminology, not on the specific dossiers, because, like I said, for the dossier generation, we use the rapid augmented generation approach, where retrieval augmented generation approach, where actually the training itself is not needed. So all we needed from the training side is for LLM to properly understand the abbreviations and the terminology from the pharmaceutical sector, and then that's it. So it's trained on more or less general knowledge.
Exactly. And maybe just to very quickly add there as well, obviously, it's very, let's say, difficult to get all of the kind of databases from the different dossiers. So you can use obviously available dossiers, but the underlying, let's say, publication reports, and especially clinical study reports, are not publicly available. So that's as well one of the kind of difficulties what we all have. So if you want to use it and train it, you don't have the kind of key basis for that. That is why we basically took the approach, as Alex has just said. And but we have obviously tried to use wherever we had the permission from our clients to test it internally from already existing projects.
Great, fantastic. Yeah, and I just want to mention, well, not every dossier is like a good source as a training method, right? So it's also, some kinds, even when we look at the beginning. So, okay, great. So last but not least, again, dear audience, just scan the code and book your demo with Stefan and Alex here, the live Dobo show for yourself. And I think that's it for today. Stay tuned on LinkedIn for our next webinar coming up in September. with Acubo and with more about artificial intelligence here in the world of market access. And check out our website, marketaccess4-o.com. You can also use the QR code here on top of the page to go on our page, on our webpage, and check out all our nice AI-based products supporting your successful way to market access. Well, I think that's it for today. No more questions. And sure, there's one last question here from Richard. I was unfortunately late to join, so Richard, we are happy to give you another recording. I think there's also a recording always available on LinkedIn, and also feel free, just if not, to get our recording here. Thank you. That's it for today, and I wish you a nice summer.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Market Access 4.0.